Hello everyone and welcome back to Cute Crochet. My name is Sri and in today's video I am going to show you how to make this adorable gingerbread house amigurumi. It's super easy to make and perfect for beginners, and it makes the most adorable Christmas tree ornament. I had so much fun coming up with the pattern and I am going to show you all of the pieces step by step. So let's get started. To make this, you'll need light brown, dark brown, red, green and white yarn, and also some golden thread to make the loop for the ornament. I used a silver rhinestone as a doorknob. To reinforce the walls and the roof, I used some thin cardboard, the kind that you find in packaging like in cereal boxes. You'll need some fabric glue and some regular school glue. And for tools, you will need a crochet hook, a yarn needle and a pair of scissors. For the gingerbread cookies, I am going to use this brown yarn. This is the 4-ply yarn, and with it I am going to use a 3mm crochet hook, which is a couple of sizes smaller than what is recommended for this yarn. I do this so that my stitches are nice and tight and none of the stuffing shows through. I am going to start by making a slip knot. Next we are going to make 8 plus 1, so 9 chains. To chain, simply yarn over and pull through the loop on your hook. Repeat this 9 times. Here I have made 8 chains. I am going to make one extra chain, making it 9. This does not count with the rest of the chains. We are not going to work into it. This is going to be simply a turning chain. For row 1, skip the first chain and make a single crochet into the second chain from the hook. To make a single crochet, insert your hook into the chain and pull up a loop. You will have 2 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through 2. That's our first single crochet. Into the second chain, make a single crochet, insert your hook and pull up a loop. 2 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through 2. Repeat making single crochets like this all the way across the length of the chain. Here I am making one last single crochet into the very first chain. After making one single crochet into each chain all the way across, you will have 8 single crochets in total. For row 2, chain 1 and turn your work. This chain is again a turning chain. For row 2, make one single crochet into each stitch all the way across. Here I am at the end of row 2. For row 3, chain 1 and turn your work. From row 3 to row 8, for 6 more rows, we are going to repeat row 2, making one single crochet into each stitch all the way across. I am going to finish this and meet back up with you. Here I finished making up to row 8. This is going to be a side wall of the house. Now we are going to get started on the front wall. For row 9, chain 1 and turn your work. This row we are going to work into the back loops only. If you look at each stitch carefully, they have a front loop and a back loop. For this row we are only going to work in the back loops. Make one single crochet into the back loops of the first 7 stitches. Into the back loop of the last stitch of the row, we are going to increase, and increase is simply placing 2 stitches into one stitch. Here I'm at the end of row 9. At the end of row 9, you will have 9 single crochets. For row 10, chain 1 and turn your work. Into the first stitch, we are going to increase, placing 2 single crochets into one stitch. Then make 1 single crochet into the remaining 8 stitches of this row. Here I'm at the end of row 10. You'll have 10 single crochets. For row 11, chain 1 and turn your work. Make 1 single crochet into the first 9 stitches of the row. Into the last stitch of the row, increase. This brings us to the end of row 11. You will have 11 single crochets. For row 12, chain 1 and turn your work. Increase in the first stitch. Then 1 single crochet into the remaining 10 stitches of this row. Here I'm at the end of row 12. At the end of row 12, you will have 12 stitches. For row 13, chain 1 and turn your work. 1 single crochet into the first 11 stitches of the row. Into the last stitch of the row, increase. This brings us to the end of row 13. You will have 13 single crochets. Now you can see a clear upward slope. Row 13 was our last increased row for now. Now we are going to get started on our downward slope. For row 14, chain 1 and turn your work. We are going to decrease into the first 2 stitches of the row. To make a decrease, go into the first stitch and pull up a loop like you normally would for a single crochet, but don't complete the stitch. Again, go into the next stitch and pull up a loop. When you have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops, and this is our decrease stitch. Now make 1 single crochet into the remaining 11 single crochet of the row. Here I am at the end of row 14. You will have 12 stitches. For row 15, chain 1 and turn your work. Make 1 single crochet into the first 10 stitches of the row. Into the last 2 stitches of the row, we are going to decrease. This brings us to the end of row 15. At the end of row 15, you will have 11 single crochets. For row 16, chain 1 and turn your work. Decrease into the first 2 stitches of the row. Then 1 single crochet into the remaining 9 stitches of the row. Here I'm at the end of row 16. You will have 10 single crochets. For row 17, chain 1 and turn your work. Make 1 single crochet into the first 8 stitches of the row. Into the last 2 stitches of the row, decrease. At the end of row 17, you will have 9 single crochets. For row 18, chain 1 and turn your work. Decrease into the first 2 stitches. Then 1 single crochet into the remaining 7 stitches of the row. At the end of row 18, you will have 8 single crochets. This is the end of the front wall of the gingerbread house. You should have a nice symmetric peak like this. Now we are going to get started on the next side wall of the house. For row 19, chain 1 and turn your work. Row 19 is going to be worked into the back loops only. We work in the back loops to demarcate the walls. Into each one of the stitches, make 1 single crochet into the back loops. Here I am at the end of row 19. You will have 8 single crochets. Now, considering row 19 as row 1, we are going to repeat from row 2 to row 18 all over again for the next 2 walls of the gingerbread house. I am going to finish this and meet back up with you. Here I finished making all 4 walls of the gingerbread house. Chain 1 and fasten off, leaving a long enough tail for sewing. We will need one more gingerbread piece for the bottom of the house. Start by making a chain 8 plus 1, then make 10 rows of single crochets. That's it. For the roof, bring in your white yarn and start by making a slip knot. Then chain 10 plus 1. From the second chain from the hook, make one single crochet into each chain. Here I am at the end of row 1. From row 2 we are going to start making the shingles. Turn your work. For the shingles we are going to work in the back loops only. If you look at each stitch carefully, each stitch has a front loop and a back loop. This row we are only going to work in the back loops. Chain 3 to start. Then slip stitch into the third chain from the hook to form a picot. Each picot is going to be a shingle. Then we are going to skip the first stitch and slip stitch into the back loop of the second stitch of the previous row. Again chain 3. Slip stitch into the third chain from the hook to form a picot. Skip the next stitch and slip stitch into the back loop of the next stitch after that. We are going to repeat this 3 more times. Chain 3 and slip stitch into the third chain from the hook to form a picot. Then skip the next stitch and slip stitch into the back loop of the next stitch after that. Here I am at the end of row 2. I have made 5 picots for this row. For row 3, chain 1 and turn your work. For this row, we are going to work into the front loops of row 1 that we left before. Into each one of the front loops, make one single crochet. Here I am at the end of row 3. You will have 10 single crochets. Turn your work. For row 4, we are going to again make picots, but this time we are going to stagger our picots to make it look even more like shingles. For that, slip stitch into the back loop of the first stitch, then picot, then skip the next stitch and slip stitch into the back loop of the next stitch after that. Repeat this 3 more times. For row 4, we are going to have 4 shingles in total. After making the 4 picots, there will be one more stitch remaining in this row. Slip stitch into the back loop of that stitch as well. This brings us to the end of row 4. For row 5, chain 1 and turn your work. Row 5 is going to be worked into the front loops of row 3. Into each of the front loops, make one single crochet. Here I am at the end of row 5. At this point, you should be able to see that your picots are staggered and how they are stacking together to form the shingle look. Next, I am going to repeat rows 2, 3, 4 and 5 once more, and then I am going to meet back up with you. I have repeated the last 4 rows. I am at row 9. For row 10, I am again going to make the shingles, but this time we don't need to work in the back loops only. This is the last row. Start by making a picot. Skip the first stitch and slip stitch into the second stitch. This time you can just go under both of the loops. Repeat this 4 more times. Here I am at the end of row 10. You can now cut off the excess yarn and fasten off, leaving a long enough tail for weaving in. This is one side of the roof complete. You'll need to make 2 of this piece. Place the 2 pieces back side to back side. We are going to sew it across the top. To make the top look like a candy cane, I am going to use this red yarn to sew. Come in through the back of the first stitch of the top piece. Then go over to the other side and sew through the first stitches of both pieces. Again go over to the other side and sew through the next stitch of both pieces. Continue like this all the way across the top. This technique will make your stitches go diagonal, making it look like candy cane stripes. Here I have sewn all the way across the top. I am going to weave in all of the ends using a smaller crochet hook. Just go under a couple of stitches on the back and pull the yarn tail through. Repeat this for all of the yarn tails. I am going to decorate the walls while they are still flat before assembly. This is also true for real gingerbread houses. It's just easier to decorate when your pieces are flat. For the front of the house, I am going to add a little brown door, a tiny wreath to go on top of it, and also a stripe of candy cane to go around the door. On the two side walls, I am going to embroider some candy cane windows. Let's move on to making the individual pieces. For the door, with this deep brown yarn, start by making a slip knot. Then we are going to chain 5 plus 2, so 7. The last two chains is going to act as the first half double crochet. Here I have made my 7 chains. The first two chains we are going to skip. In the third chain we are going to make a half double crochet. For a half double crochet, yarn over, go into the third chain and pull up a loop. You will have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through all 3 loops at the same time. That's a half double crochet. Again in the next chain, yarn over, go into the next chain and pull up a loop. Yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on your hook. Continue like this in the next 2 chains. Here I have made 4 half double crochets. Counting the first chain 2, we have 5. In the last chain, make 5 half double crochets in the same chain. While working in the last chain, if it gets loosened up, you can pull on this tail to tighten it right back up. Then we are going to work down the other side of the chain, and we are also going to work over the yarn tail as we go. On the opposite side of the second chain, make a half double crochet. Continue like this for the next 3 chains. Then we are going to put one last half double crochet into the second chain of the first chain 2. That's it. Fast enough, leaving a long enough tail for sewing. You can also go ahead and cut the rest of this yarn tail. It has been woven insufficiently. Next, I am going to make the candy cane stripes. For that, you will need red and white yarn of the same length. Here, I am going to make a short one to go around the door, around 5 inches. For the window embroidery, you will need a longer piece, about 9 inches. First, take you 2 strands of yarn and tie a knot on one end. I am going to tape down the top part of it to my work surface. Honestly, this isn't the best way of doing this. This is just how I did it on camera. It's better to clip it or tie it somewhere. Or I like to hold it in between my teeth. It is just so that it doesn't move when you tug on it while braiding. I am basically going to make a rope braid with these 2 strands of yarn. If any of you have done it with your hair, you will know. I am going to twist one piece clockwise and then cross it over anti-clockwise. Same with the second piece. Twist it clockwise and then cross it over anti-clockwise. Repeat this again and again with the 2 strands. Continue like this all the way down the length of the yarn. Even when you let go of it, your rope twist won't unravel. Here I finished my rope braid. This is just long enough to go around my door. Next I am going to make the wreath. With green yarn, start by making a slip knot. Then chain 5. Then slip stitch into the first chain to join. This will create a ring that we are then going to work into. Into this ring we are going to make reverse single crochets. Start by making a normal single crochet into the ring. Insert your hook into the ring and pull up a loop. 2 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through 2. That's our first single crochet. Now to make the next single crochet normally, we go over onto the left of the stitch and pull up a loop. But in case of reverse single crochets, we instead go over to the right and pull up a loop. You will again have 2 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through 2. That's a reverse single crochet. Again go over to the right of this stitch and pull up a loop. 2 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through 2. Continue repeating like this 5 more times into the ring. We are going to make 8 single crochets in total. Here I have gone all the way around the ring making 8 reverse single crochets. Now you can go ahead and cut the excess yarn and fasten off, leaving a long enough tail for sewing. As you can see, the reverse single crochets makes a nice ridged effect. With some red yarn I am going to add a bow. Thread this yarn through the wreath. I am first making a knot with the red yarn, right where the yarn tails are, where we had started and finished our stitches. Then I am going to tie a simple bow using the very easy bunny ear method, the same way you tie your shoelaces, nothing fancy. Pull on the tails of the bow to adjust the loops, making them smaller and even. If your knot gets loose, pull on the loops to tighten it, then readjust. Once you're happy with the shape of the bow, go ahead and cut the excess yarn tail. This is our wreath complete. I'm going to start sewing on the decorations one by one, starting with the door. Lace the door, centering it on the front panel. Then to sew it on, take one loop from the wall and one loop from the door and sew through both. Continue like this all the way around the door. Here I finished sewing all the way around the door. Now from that corner of the door, bring the remaining yarn tail to the back. Next I am going to add the candy cane stripe around the door. Take both of the yarn tails of the candy cane on your yarn needle. Come in from the back to the left hand side corner of the door. Then go all the way around the door and bring the yarn to the back to the right hand side corner of the door. Obviously it's not going to stay in place like this, so I'm going to add some tiny dabs of fabric glue to hold it in place. Let the glue dry a little bit before continuing. I'm going to add the silver rhinestone to the door as a doorknob with fabric glue. Next, I'm going to sew the wreath on top of the door. First, bring both of the yarn tails of the wreath to the back to the top point of the wall. Then take the longer tail on your needle. Come in from the back around the bottom of the wreath and make one stitch to hold it in place. Then tie a knot using these two tails to secure it. I'm also going to tie off these yarn tails of the candy cane and the door. Next, let's embroider windows on the side walls. I've already done one. I'm going to place another on this panel. Count 2 stitches down from the top and 2 rows from the side. This stitch, come in from the back through that stitch. Don't pull the yarn all the way through. Leave a little bit hanging at the back. Then count 4 rows from that stitch and go to the back. Then from there count 4 stitches down and come back up to the top. Then go 4 rows to the left. You will have 2 parallel lines like this. Now we are going to connect the 2 lines. Next, I am going to make the grid for the window. For that, we are going to go into the center of each of the sides. You'll notice that for the grid, I am going outside the window frame. This might look a bit funny at first, but it gives a neater result at the end. After you've made the two grid lines, tie a knot at the back to secure the embroidery. I am going to add candy cane around the window. For that, you'll need your 9-inch candy cane stripe. Follow the same steps as the window frame to outline the window. Then you can tie a knot at the back with the remaining yarn tails to secure the embroidery. Next, I am going to add lines of white reverse single crochets along the front loops that demarcate the walls. These are going to represent the royal icing that holds the gingerbread house together. Bring in your white yarn and wrap it on your crochet hook like so. I am going to start with the second demarcating line. Starting from the top corner, I am going to make a slip stitch into the front loop to join the yarn. Then make one single crochet into the first front loop. Bring that yarn tail out of the way. We are going to deal with it in a minute. Then twist your hook and go into the previous front loop and make a single crochet into that. This is similar to how we made the wreath. Continue like this all the way across into the 8 front loops that we have here. After making the 8 reverse single crochets, cut off the excess yarn and fasten off, leaving a long enough tail for weaving in. You'll notice one thing, that the reverse single crochet line looks a bit different on the two sides. Both sides are pretty but a bit different. So to make sure that our piece is symmetric when we do it on the first demarcating line, we want to make sure that this kind of edge is facing the right and this kind of edge is facing the left. For that, we simply need to start from the bottom corner and go all the way up. In the next one, we have gone from top down. In the next one after that, we again want to go bottom up. And when we do the last line, this is after we have assembled the house, we are going to go top down. Here I finished making all 3 lines. I'm going to bring these yarn tails to the back. I'm going to reinforce the walls with cardboard to make them look crisp. Bring in your cardboard and trace the shape of this piece on there. It does not have to be anything precise. Add a tab on one side and then cut out the piece. After cutting out the general shape, you can compare it to your piece and then fine tune it so that it fits. As you can see, the right side wall is a lot bigger. I am going to trim it down. Make sure to leave half a centimeter on the edge for sewing. This seems to be the right size. I am now going to glue it down. Add a generous layer of glue. You can use fabric glue or school glue here. Don't add any glue to the tab part. I am spreading out the glue evenly before sticking it on. You'll notice that I have kept a tiny bit of space around the edge where I have not applied any glue. This is just so that I can adjust and trim the piece a little bit more after gluing it on. Stick the piece on, making sure to cover up all of the yarn tails and the embroidery at the back. Then leave it to dry. Repeat the same thing with the bottom and roof pieces. For the roof, make sure that the cardboard does not cover the last line of shingles. After the glue has dried, we are going to crease all of the pieces along the appropriate edges. Then I am going to add glue to this tab and glue the house into shape. We are going to sew up this edge using this yarn tail that we left. To sew, we are going to first flip over this part. You should be able to see some back loops, these bumps right here. We are going to sew a piece into these loops. The front loops we are going to use for making the royal icing edge. Take a loop from the outer edge of one side and the back loop from one side and sew through both. Repeat like this all the way across. Then you can tie a knot using these two tails. You should be able to clearly see these front loops here. We are going to make a line of reverse single crochets into them, and like I mentioned before, we are going to go top down. Here I finished adding the last reverse single crochet line. I feel like you can't even tell where I have joined. Next, I'm going to add the base of the house and I'm going to start joining it from the back right corner so that the join is barely visible. Here we have 10 rows on the front and back walls and 10 rows on the base as well. Similarly, we have 8 rows on the side walls and 8 stitches across for the base. So we should be able to match them up perfectly when we sew. We are going to join using reverse single crochets. Bring in your white yarn and wrap it on your crochet hook like so. Then go in through the first row of the wall and the first row of the base and make a slip stitch to join. Then make a single crochet in that same space. Tuck that yarn tail inside before continuing. Then go through the next row of the wall and the next row of the base and make a reverse single crochet through both. Continue repeating like this all the way across for the 10 rows. Here I finished making 10 reverse single crochets. It will look like this on the bottom. Now we are going to move over to the next side. Again, insert your hook into the first row of the side panel, then into the first stitch of the piece. Make a reverse single crochet through both. Continue like this and sew the base all the way around. Here I have sewn all the way around. I am making one last reverse single crochet into the last stitch. Then you can cut the excess yarn and fasten off, leaving a long enough tail for weaving in. To weave in this yarn tail, come in through the inside of the house, out through the first stitch that we started from, and bring that yarn tail through. I have done the same thing with all the other yarn tails that we had as well. Last but not least, we are going to glue on the roof. Add a generous line of fabric glue along the top edge. Then set the roof in place. You might have to hold it for a couple of minutes just until the glue sets. Make sure to push down on the roof so that it connects on all sides. After the glue has dried, I am going to add a loop on top using this golden thread to turn it into an ornament. And that's it. I hope you guys liked this video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.